He is one of Pennsylvania's favorite sons, General Anthony Wayne, the 18th century Revolutionary War hero who gave over 20 of his 51 years in staunch service to the United States. He was both a fearless soldier whose heart thrilled in the chaos of battle and a careful general who never made command decisions without proper deliberation. But above all, Wayne was gifted with an amazing knack at pulling off major victories when the people of the fledgling United States most needed them. And while countless individuals threw their lives into building the young country, few could boast such a stunning success at repelling America's enemies as could the Pennsylvanian-born general. The name Anthony Wayne probably doesn't figure largely in the lives of most Pennsylvanians today, but the general's legacy is apparent on any map of the state. In addition to the municipalities of Wayne, Waynesboro, and Waynesburg, 9 townships and 1 county bear his name. For those who choose not to believe in an afterlife, such widespread posthumous recognition may be considered as close to immortality as an individual can get. According to the following tale, however, a person can achieve an entirely different sort of immortality, regardless of place names and legendary claim. In addition to his name, one might say that Wayne's very remains are spread across the state. Some of the general is respectfully buried in the state's northwest corner in Presque Island, while other parts are quietly resting in the southwest corner in the small hamlet of Radnor in Chester County. The rest of him is scattered anywhere between. Such a bizarre state of post-mortem affairs, in addition to an untimely death at the peak of his career, might impel the spirit of Anthony Wayne to haunt the state that bred him. Wayne was born in Radnor on January 1st, 1745. Not much above his early life indicated that he would achieve the status of a living legend. The only thing that really stood out about young Wayne was his fervent love for all matters military. A mediocre student, he owed most of his opportunities to the favors of patronage and his family's lofty social standing. After a failed attempt at land surveying while he was in his early 20s, he returned to Radnor to work with his father, helping on the family farm and tannery. At the time, enthusiasm and influence were enough to make one an officer in the Continental Army. On January 3rd, 1776, Wayne was commissioned as colonel of the 4th Pennsylvania Battalion. It would prove the start of a long and illustrious military career. He distinguished himself as one of the Revolution's preeminent military figures, capable of molding any group of men into a premier fighting force. Although cautious with his strategies, the dauntless general was not reluctant to join the front lines and roar in the face of the enemy. This tendency to revel in the physical dangers of battle earned him the sobriquet of Mad Anthony Wayne, one of the most illustrious names to go down in the annals of American history. The 1st Battalion Wayne commanded covered the retreat of the American Army out of Canada after the Battle of Three Rivers. Promoted to brigadier general following his command of Fort Ticonderoga, Wayne fought next at Brandywine Creek, where he held back the British Army while Washington and his defeated force retreated to safety. Remaining in the thick of the action throughout the rest of the war, Anthony Wayne was already a famous officer when he won his illustrious victory at Stony Point. The legendary attack took place on July 16, 1779. That evening, Mad Anthony personally led a bayonet attack on the British fort. The general was grazed by a musket during the approach and had to be carried over the parapet by his men, but he remained in command of his unit until the battle was over, bellowing orders over the clash of combat as the American soldiers captured the fort's flag and took over 500 British prisoners. Stony Point was a major morale boost for the Revolution, which had won too few military victories against the British Army. After the colonies won their independence, the war hero returned to civilian life. But just as it was before the war, Wayne was less successful in civilian life than he was in the military. Indeed, after a failed attempt at running a plantation in Georgia and a number of botched political ambitions, Mad Anthony considered himself lucky that sufficient unrest on the continent still required a man of his abilities. Hostile Indians and a persistent British presence west of the Ohio River impelled George Washington to create a standing American army. Anthony Wayne was chosen as the commander-in-chief of the country's first army. On August 20th, 1794, Wayne led the Legion of the United States to a resounding victory at the Battle of Fallen Timbers, defeating the war chief Little Turtle and the Miami Confederacy that had assembled under him. Like a victorious Caesar returning from Gaul, Mad Anthony Wayne was at the peak of his career when he rode back into Pennsylvania in the winter of 1796. Some historians claim that his popularity was such that even the title of president was within his reach. Of this, we can never be certain. On his way back to Pittsburgh, he became ill with gout. He would never beat the illness. Whatever ambitions he entertained died with him along the shores of Lake Erie. He passed away in the recent constructed blockhouse and was given a soldier's burial under the flagpole. So passed away one of America's greatest. But his story does not end there. 13 years later, Wayne's son Isaac made the trip from Chester County to Erie with the intent of taking his father's remains back to the family plot in Radnor. Everyone involved in exhuming the general's corpse must have been shocked to discover that his body was remarkably well preserved. Isaac was understandably unwilling to transport the rotting corpse of his father across the state in the back of a wagon. Instead, he consulted a doctor who recommended that the remains be boiled in a cauldron, thus separating the dead general's bones from his tissue. Isaac followed the doctor's advice. The fleshy remains of Mad Anthony Wayne that were left in the bottom of the pot were once again buried in Erie. The general's bones unfortunately had no such luck. Legend has it that a good number of them were jolted from the wagon on the way back, as Isaac made his way down what is now U.S. Route 322. The wagon lifted and swung over the rocky, heavily rutted road, leaving a rough trail of the general's bones from Erie to Radnor. After a ceremonial burial in St. David's Church in Radnor on July 4th, 1809, what was left of Wayne's skeleton was buried in the family plot. But according to countless eyewitnesses, his rest was not been peaceful. In fact, on every New Year's Day since he was buried, an apparition of the dead general has been spotted along Route 322. Mounted on a phantom horse, the figure tears down the highway at incredible speed, passing straight through anything in his way without breaking his stride. Some eyewitnesses have been able to make out the details of his uniform, the epaulets on his shoulders, his saber bouncing on his side, and his tricorn hat sitting atop his powdered wig. The same people have also reported that his blank eyes glance from one side of the road to the other, almost as if to search for something that is lying on the side of the highway. Such accounts give credence to the popular theory that Mad Anthony's ghost is looking for the bones that were not buried with him in Radnor. In this scenario, the apparition shows Wayne's supernatural discontent at having his remains disturbed and strewn across the state. There are other theories as well. A few of his biographers write about how difficult it must have been for the headstrong general to face such a meek end so soon after winning glory on the battlefield. If Mad Anthony Wayne had his choice, he would have surely preferred to fall in a hail of musket fire than in the quiet comfort of the Erie blockhouse. His last breaths must have brought with them the realization that if his frail moral frame had not failed him, his victory at Fallen Timbers may have cast him into the highest echelons of society, perhaps even as far as the White House. The world was finally his oyster, but he could not even get out of bed. Those who shudder at the thought of such frustrated ambitions are more inclined to believe that Mad Anthony's apparition has more to do with the general's anger at never being able to enjoy the fruits of his labors. Either way, drivers on U.S. Route 322 on New Year's Day should beware, unless motorists don't mind having a 200-year-old ghost pass straight through their car. It would be wise for them to give any ghostly horseman in the rearview mirror the right of way.